guys, it's Will. It's Hong Kong Cinema Appreciation Society. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new to the channel, welcome and thank you for finding us. And a quick shout out to our patrons who are incredible, who do so much to support this channel. I'm eternally grateful that people give any money to this channel, or even really any time at all. But the fact that people give money to us consistently so we can buy these Blu-ray releases, keep this channel running. You know, we pay for our Google storage drive through the Patreon stuff too, for all of the videos that we make, these huge archives that we have of all these movies that we're digitizing and stuff. So huge thank you. We are here today to talk about Jet frickin' Li, Hell to the S, the man, the myth, the legend. This is the 3-film set from Eureka. I'm going to be reviewing My Father is a Hero, which is known as the Enforcer on this set, which for many years was my favorite Jet Li movie, and may still well be. Honestly, I need to rewatch like every Jet Li movie. The last time I watched My Father is a Hero, which again is called the Enforcer on this set, was 9 years ago. And Once Upon a Time in China 1 and 2, I honestly don't think I've seen in like 20 years. Fist of Legend I watched more recently, but maybe 8 years ago, 7, 8 years ago. It's been a really long time for a lot of Jet Li with me. So I really do need to revisit. But I watched My Father is a Hero on this set last night. I really enjoyed it. I had a great time with it. I'm very happy with this set. Like, I know that some people don't like the fact that there's 3 films in the set, and to me this like reminds me of the days of the DVD box sets where you would like go to Best Buy and it's like, oh, there's 8 Jackie Chan movies for $5. Hell yeah, I'm gonna get that, and I'm just gonna marathon a shitload of Jackie movies. Or like the first time I saw My Father is a Hero, it was in a 3-movie set of Jet Li movies. It was the Tai Chi one that he's in, I think Bodyguard from Beijing, and My Father is a Hero, if I remember correctly. It's good nostalgia. I know that everyone has different relationships with these movies. They have different ways they want them to be released, different things they prefer about the releases. But I have like very fond memories of those days of like the DVD sets where they would release a bunch of these movies in one go and they'd be relatively inexpensive. And so I kind of like this. It's like a really high quality version of that, where instead of like, you know, the crappy US cut with like the dub, you get the full uncut versions of the film with the original audio and various options and bonus material. It's like the super fancy ass amazing edition of those sets, and so I really enjoyed it. So the other films on here are The Scriptures of Dr. Y, I believe is the name of the movie, or Dr. Y in the Scripture with No Words. Excuse me, I've never seen that movie before. So, and then Contract Killer, which is called what, Hitman? Yeah. These movies have so many titles. Like, and I know The Enforcer is like the one that the title most people know this movie as. But wait a minute, in my defense, there it is right there. My Father is a Hero. This movie came out in 1995. It came out in March of 1995. So I think it ran from March 2nd to March 29th, thereabouts, in 1995. So this is where the discs are, as you can see they're in here. And then there's artwork for each of the films. Like if you pop this out here, so there's the Dr. Y artwork. And then, I'm sorry, just getting some glare there. And then behind the disc for Hitman, here you get the, the artwork for that film, if you can see that. So there you go. But we're here today to talk mostly about My Father is a Hero. Like I said, released in 1995, and March of 95. I think it made about 15 million at the Hong Kong box office, so it seems like it was like an okay hit for the time. Here's the booklet here. And it was directed by Yuen. It says it right here. Screenplay by Sandy Shaw, who wrote The Heroic Trio and I think Justice My Foot and some other very famous movies that you probably will have heard of. The story was by Wong Jing, interestingly. There's an interview with Wong Jing on the disc, and then Wong Jing also produced the film. And Jet Li is in it, Anita Mui, so like the two of them, I mean, come on, that's amazing. Yu Rong Guang is in it, Damien Lau, Blackie Ko, Ken Lo is in it. And then there's a little page for this movie, which again, I've never seen before, and I know basically nothing about. And then Hitman, which I think I've seen this movie. These movies have so many titles. And most of the Jet Li movies I've seen, I saw like late 90s, early 2000s, and a lot of them I have not seen since then. So I'm like, I think I saw that movie, but I don't totally know. And yeah, so there's, yeah, so you get, so Simon Abrams, so David Desser wrote about My Father is a Hero here. Simon Abrams wrote about Dr. Y in The Scripture with No Words. So Simon Abrams recently did that big New Yorker piece on John Woo. So you'll probably know who he is if you saw that. And then The Hitman, again by David Desser, which we have here. And yeah, so like a substantial booklet. You get rather Simon Yam. Maybe I haven't seen. I feel like I would have remembered Simon Yam being in this movie, but this is Hitman. Maybe I haven't seen it. I thought I saw it at some point. Anywho, I'll watch it and then I'll know. But we're here today to talk about My Father is a Hero because, like I said, this was for many years my favorite Jet Li movie, and I really, really did enjoy rewatching it. I'm not sure whether I've seen the extended cut before because a lot of it I was like, I don't really remember this, I don't really remember this, but then I haven't watched it in 9 years. I just maybe just not remembering because it's been so damn long since the last time I saw this movie. So I gave you a basic rundown of physical release, everybody who's involved in this film. Cool. So plot, just so you know what this movie's about. Jet Li is a like undercover agent in China, in Beijing, I believe. And he's married, he's got a son, and the movie is kind of it's a really interesting film. And I'm gonna get more into my thoughts in a minute here, but just to give you a little bit about the plot. A lot of the movie is about his moral conflict of like, he can't tell his wife and his son what he does for a job, and he has to keep on leaving them, and his wife is like sick, and he feels really bad about that, and he wants to get out, and his boss is like, you just got to do this one more mission, and he ends up going to Hong Kong for this final mission, and he leaves his wife and his son behind in China, and then he's undercover in Hong Kong, and he gets identified tentatively by the Hong Kong police, and Anita Mui is the Hong Kong police officer who's like investigating him. So she doesn't know that he's this undercover agent, and she's like, it's really, really like the setup is really interesting. So let me get into my thoughts on this movie since we're talking. Yeah, I really enjoyed this rewatch because one of the in the last year I think I've watched like at least 4 Corey Yuen films because I watched Righting Wrongs because Vinegar Syndrome put that out last year, and I watched that at the end of last year, like November, December, so about a year ago. I watched Yes Madam a couple times last year, well, at least, because at the end of last year, or was it December, January at some point, there was Yes Madam from Eureka, and then 88 Films put out the set of those movies. So I watched that movie probably like 4 or 5 times last year. And then I watched She Shoots Straight, which I absolutely freaking loved. My favorite Corey Yuen movie. I'm not even exaggerating. That is now my favorite Corey Yuen movie. And so this is at least 4th Corey Yuen film in the past year. And like I said, I watched I watched She Shoots Straight, I think 3 times. And I think I watched Yes Man, like I said, probably 5 times in the last year. And then Righting Wrongs, I think I watched maybe twice, however many commentary tracks are on there. Because I watched the film and then I watched the commentary track. And Corey Yuen is such an interesting filmmaker, and I'll talk about why. I want to talk about this film specifically, and then I'll talk about Corey Yuen. But he's such an interesting filmmaker for like certain things really stand out to me as being consistent to his voice across his films. It's very interesting. But to get into this movie, there's this like really gritty kind of grounded realism to this movie that kind of reminds me of like borderline reminds me of Ringo Lam. There's a lot of melodrama in this movie, which reminds me of She Shoots Straight, which is a film that has a lot of melodrama in it. But then you also have this totally over the top, like operatic violence and like wire work fight scenes and like really over the top, very kind of hyper real. Like the fight scenes are not trying to be realistic. What's interesting about that is that, it's like if Ringo Lam directed this film, right? If we're just thinking of comparisons, the whole thing would be of a gritty tone. It would all be dark, violent, gritty, and grounded in these characters. There's a lot of that in this movie. If John Woo made this movie, and again, very heroic bloodshed kind of like, to me, the center of this movie is really the moral and emotional conflicts and trials and tribulations of cops and criminals. And there's this really interesting relationship that develops between Jet Li and Blackie Ko plays this criminal, because Blackie Ko is not really ultimately a bad guy, even though he's a criminal, and he ends up actually kind of like looking out for Jet Li, and Jet Li's kind of starts to see different shades of criminality and is not as much black and white about what he perceives to be a bad person. And there's a really interesting kind of heroic bloodshed style stuff like that. But if John Woo made this movie, it would the whole thing I think would be very over the top and it would very much play into the operatic emotions, the melodrama. It would be, explosions and gunfights, and like John Woo has a very like maximalist style, whereas Ringo Lam I think would tone it back and be more subtle and gritty about it. And Corey Yuen is doing both of those things at the same time. Right now, if Corey Yuen did that in one movie, you would think, oh, well, he was going for something and he didn't quite find the balance, or like that's something that people say about this movie, like it doesn't quite strike the balance or whatever. But then when you look at consistently across all his movies, he's doing that. Like She Shoots Straight has grounded drama, melodrama. He's got a lot of focus on female characters and conflicts that they go through, especially when they're in a male world, like law enforcement, violence, criminality, and stuff like that, right? But also like the emotional conflicts and like how it's harder for them being women to be in this world because they have to deal with added stuff that men don't have to deal with, right? And those types of conflicts and stuff like that. But there's always that kind of there's like an emotional core to his films that's realistic and relatable. And I think, I mean, someone said on the She Shoots Straight Blu-ray that it kind of draws from TVB melodrama because that was so popular in Hong Kong. And you can see how these types of stories would be heavily influenced by television melodrama, right? And almost like soap operas and kind of stuff like that. But he makes it grounded and real and emotional, right? Like the Anita Mui character ends up going to, this is not really a spoiler, like a tiny spoiler, I guess. She goes to China and she meets the wife of the Jet Li character, and she ends up becoming friends with her. And she becomes friends with the son. And again, I guess this is a tiny spoiler. She does eventually find out that he's an undercover agent, right? But before she figures that out, she still starts to relate to him and empathize with him. Even when she thinks she's a criminal, she's like, this guy has like, they don't have any money. His wife is sick. Like, his son really looks up to him. He's like trying to give his family something better than what they have, something to aspire to. And the movie goes, and this is really interesting, I think, the movie goes into the emotional life and the social life and stuff of the son too, and gets into like kids bullying him at school because like at one point when the Jet Li character, again, not really a spoiler, but as part of his cover, he has to get arrested. So other kids at the school are like, oh, your dad's like a criminal and you're just like this dirty, like, and people are making fun of him, and like he knows in his heart that his dad is not a bad guy, but everyone thinks he's bad and kids are bullying him. And like it really goes deep into the emotional fallout and turmoil of people whose lives are affected by like very dangerous undercover police work and stuff like that. And like the Anita Mui character is this is a really interesting thing too. And this is not really a spoiler because it's not really like, it's more like I wouldn't even call it a subplot. It's just kind of like this little thing that's mentioned in a couple scenes. She's having an affair with this guy who keeps saying he's going to leave his wife, but doesn't end up leaving his wife. And so like, it's just really interesting to see all the emotional and moral complications of the lives that these people lead, and to look deeply into the fact that they are human. They're not these superheroes, right? But then what makes it even more interesting is you do have this superhero element of like the wire work and the insane fight scenes and the over the top shootouts and like the insane heightened pitch of the action in this film. But Corey Yuen, again, in She Shoots Straight, he does the same thing. He has these insane, almost like Shaw Brothers style, like batshit insane, like wire work, like crazy weapons fight scenes, but really grounded, emotional, meaningful character stories, and with family and deaths in the family and like all this kind of serious stuff that's handled seriously, right? And in Yes Madam, you have the really kind of bleak, dark story of the what's going on with the Michelle Yeoh character and the Cynthia Rothrock character, and how bad the bad guys are in that film, and the fact that they kind of almost like give up on their I guess I'm spoiling Yes Madam, but like they have to turn their backs on the fact that they're law enforcement officers because they can't find justice through the system, which is something you see in Righting Wrongs too. This really serious examination of the fact that these people who have devoted their lives to law enforcement and justice, like Yuen Bia's character is a lawyer, right? And he can't find what he believes to be meaningful justice through the system. And in a way, this movie does have kind of similar themes because it does touch upon the fact that these people, Anita Mui and Jet Li, end up having to make decisions based on a morality and a sense of human relationship that is not strictly based upon the black and white strictures of the law that they are sworn to uphold, that they have to make moral decisions that maybe operate slightly outside of that, right? So Corey Yun's films, I mean, these four films that I'm talking about specifically do look at morality and being a good person and human relationships and the ways in which people who are within systems with very rigid rules cannot often operate the way that they feel as though they need to because of the confines of the rules in which they're living, right? It's a really interesting common thread throughout these films. But I mean, there's just really strong performances in this movie, and again, like the action is, there are a couple action scenes I really like. There's like a kind of an opening scene where Jet Li is like undercover trying to bust these guys who make fake passports. And there's like a little kind of fight chase thing, and then they end up in this like sports arena where there's like a martial arts competition, and they're having a fight like up in the catwalks and the rafters. I really like that scene. I really like, there's like a shootout in a restaurant, shootout fight scene, like chaos, like all these people are trying to escape while guns are going off. And like I freaking love that. That scene is awesome. And then like the ending fight scene, there's Yu Rong Guang and Jet Li fighting. Like, I mean, what can you not like about that? And if you watch this channel, I'm not like a particularly big fan of wire work. And I find a little bit of it goes a long way. And part of that is I just really like fight scenes that have hard impact. And I find that the wire work is so delicate and balletic and graceful in a way that it doesn't like hit the way I want it to. Like one of the reasons I love Jackie Chan, people, we talk about Jackie Chan's sense of humor, his goofiness and things like that, but like the fight scenes in his movies really hit hard, right? And Jet Li is a phenomenal martial artist who can really hit hard. And I feel like the impact of that is slightly lessened when he's like, flying around on a wire. That's just me. I know a lot of people freaking love wire work and that's like their whole shit. And they like love that whole era of, that big resurgence of like the wire work films in the 90s and stuff like that. And they love that stuff. You can see a lot of the wires in this movie. It's because the movie looks really good, right? It's HD, it's remaster, and so it's really funny to like see all the wires in the scenes and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, it's a movie that I really like the emotional core of this film. If you're someone who like wants to see Jet Li beating the shit out of people, and you want to see that in the context of like a heroic bloodshed John Woo style movie, this is really not your movie. Like most of this movie is character drama, and it's about the conflicts that these people experience. But there's like some freaking amazing visual stuff in this film. There's two shots that really stunned me that I rewound and watched again. One of them is a shot inside of a jail. That's just, I'll show it in the video so you can see what I'm talking about. It's just a really cool shot. And then there's an overhead shot in this village in China where Jet Li's character lives with his family. And I just, one thing that's really interesting about this film actually is I don't know where they filmed this movie and if it was filmed in China. I would assume not, but I honestly don't know. But it just, what the scenes that take place in China are, the texture is just so different than a film that takes place in Hong Kong, like in urban Hong Kong, right? And that's just something really cool to see. And there's like fog and it's cold and like it just has a very different feel than what you're used to seeing in like urban like Hong Kong city films. And I appreciated that. It's really interesting to see. And there's just like some really beautiful moments in this film. Like there's a scene where Jet Li and his son are like brushing their teeth together in the morning and then they're washing their faces and they like have this little competition to see who can keep their like head down in the bowl, holding their breath for longer. And then the mom is like, did you guys beat your record from yesterday? Like there are little touches like that that do a lot to kind of like add texture and depth to the familial relations. So you really understand how much they care about one another and how close they are as a family and how hard a lot of the emotional turmoil that they experience in this film is. And again, it's not all grounded realistic drama. It gets like there's a crime plot in this movie too, right? Where Jet Li is undercover. That's interesting too, because some of it is handled with a kind of a sense of grittiness and realism that plays into the drama and melodrama aspects of the film. But then some of it is very over the top. But again, you can't just dismiss this as a film where he's trying different things and it's not quite hitting, because it seems like a signature element of Corey Yuen's style is to stitch together these things that don't seem to work. And what that, like, to me, that's what makes him an interesting artist. He has a unique voice. And his voice is, I can do grounded, gritty, real drama. I can do very emotional character melodrama. I can do these insane freaking wirework set pieces. I can do gun action. And instead of making a movie that's one of those things, I'm going to make a movie that's all of those things, right? But each of these big movies that I've talked about of his, and I know that he made a lot of other films, right? But these are the ones I'm kind of thinking about because they're the ones I've watched recently. They all do weird shit like that. Like, Yes, Madam has the totally outlandish, like, slapstick goofball humor. And then it has the really bleak, serious crime plot. And it's just really interesting to see all these things kind of stitched. I mean, Righting Wrongs, I think you could probably argue is like the most consistent in tone. And yet that film is really interesting because it has that really great relationship between the character Corey Yuen plays and the Wu Ma character, his dad. That's Wu Ma, right? Who plays his dad in Righting Wrongs? I think so. But then you have this really nasty, like, exploitation, scuzzy, brutal, like, remorseless quality to that film. And so again, you're taking this kind of like melodrama of the dad and the son and their relationship, and there's humor in it, but there's tragedy in it too. And you're putting it into this almost like trashy vessel of like grindhouse nastiness. And again, it's his voice. It repeats consistently throughout his work. So it's just, I think that's really interesting. I feel like I sound like a broken record at this point. I'm just looking to see if there's anything else I wanted to touch upon, but I think that's basically everything I want to talk about. Oh, one other thing that I think is really interesting about this film that I don't have a lot to say about because I'm not an expert by any means in this area. Yeah. I'm sorry, it's late at night. Whenever I'm in the laundry room, you can know I'm in the laundry room. You know it's late at night and I'm tired. Anyway, this movie came out in 1995, so just 2 years before the handover, and it's about an agent from Beijing going undercover to Hong Kong. It's about a Hong Kong cop going to Beijing. It's about neither one of them really feeling at home in the systems of the other and of their systems creating an inherent sense of distrust, but about the way in which the two people as individuals come to understand one another, come to a point of deep reconciliation and genuinely care for one another and want to forge a common trajectory moving forward. So you can read whatever metaphor you want into that. I just thought that was really interesting. So there's an interview with Wong Jing on here. There's an interview with Ken Lo on here. And there's an interview with one of the other actors in the film. Let me see if I can find it. Sei Mu. I apologize for mispronouncing that name. And then there's an Art of Enema and Mike Leader commentary track on there. And this is like 1995, right? This is like right smack in the middle of like when Mike Leader was like working deep in the industry. I mean, I know he's still working deep in the industry, but he was like, really working at this point after, coming to Hong Kong and when 88, 89, 90, around that era. I don't remember exactly when Mike Leader rocked up to Hong Kong, but, obviously he knows everyone in this movie and like he's met them and he's got amazing anecdotes about them. And it's a really great commentary track. So I recommend that. But this is the Heroes and Villains Jet Li 3-disc, 3-film Blu-ray set from Eureka Entertainment. And that is my kind of appreciation of revisiting of My Father's a Hero, which for many years was my favorite Jet Li movie. And again, I don't, yeah, I'm not going to rank Jet Li movies now because it's been so long since I've seen all the classic ones. But I really enjoyed rewatching this film. I do think it's a really unique, interesting film. And again, if you're looking for like nonstop action, violence, fight scenes, killing, shooting, this is not your movie. It really is more of a drama. But, if you watch this channel, I really like stuff like that. And as a writer, I'm always drawn to things that are unique, that are interesting, that have a different perspective, that have an interesting voice, and also things that really devote meaningful time to like world, character, like building out the kind of the complexities and the intricacies of story tone, character motivation, things like that, like the tension between story and character and like those types of things. I think this movie does a tremendous job of that. So I really, really enjoyed the rewatch. My name is Will. You're watching Hong Kong Cinema Appreciation Society. As always, we thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.